So welcome to the program. My name is Melita Pachado, and I'm here today in Salem, Massachusetts with Susan Dame Greene, who is a certified past life regressionist. How did you get started in becoming a past life regressionist?
Actually, I'm a certified past life regression therapist.
I'm sorry.
And that's okay. And I got started in 1989. In 1989, my teenagers were driving me crazy. So I called the local UU church camp and asked them what courses they were doing that weekend, could I come up?
Yeah.
And they said, sure. And so I went up, and I was doing it for free room and board, and so I was making beds, and I was sweeping halls, and I was helping in the kitchen. And then they said, well, you know, it's getting towards supper time. Which course do you want to take? And I said, what do you have this weekend? They said, we have yoga. Well, look at me. Am I a yoga person?
Everybody's a yoga person. We'll get you into that next.
And then the second one was past life regression with Roger Wolger. And so I thought that sounded very interesting. And when I got into the classroom, I realized that it was all therapists. It was psychiatrists, psychologists, and people who were licensed social workers. And I was not. I was a banker at that time. So I went over to Roger and said, I'd really like to stay, but I don't have the credentials. He said, you're going to be fine. And that was the start of my life in past life regression, 1989. A long time ago now.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So you went back to college and...
I went back to college, and I already had a bachelor's and a master's degree. So I only had to pick up a few courses to change and become a therapist.
Wonderful.
And then I went to study with Roger. Well, Roger taught all over the world. He wasn't just in Massachusetts. He taught and I studied with him in Portugal, in Dubai, in Amsterdam, in Birmingham, England, just outside of Birmingham, England, in Rio. And so it was great fun. And I learned all about the different cultures. Well, I learned some about the different cultures that I was in at that time.
And that's because past life regression is a lot more commonly used across the world as a therapy modality.
That's right.
It's new to America, but it's very common to their culture.
Right. And I knew before I started studying with Roger that his was not going to be something I could be licensed at and take insurance for in the United States. But everybody else I studied with takes insurance and is licensed in this. I have friends in Germany, I have friends in Scotland, England, Ireland, Dubai, and Egypt, who all get, who are regular therapists and get reimbursed when they do past life regression.
Wonderful.
So basically what I got from Roger was a PhD. It's not recognized in the United States, but see this gray hair? Do I care? It doesn't make any difference to me.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So you, did you meet anybody interesting while you were studying that impacted you and how you...
Absolutely, because people were coming from all over the world for the classes, and so I met them in the classes and we all trained together. One of my friends who I am on Facebook with on a regular basis is a psychiatrist, a woman, and she works in Egypt. And she's always telling us, you think things are bad in the United States, you ought to be in Egypt.
Right, yeah. She's probably got a busy practice right now.
Yes, yeah, a very busy practice, because things are really not good there. Conversely, the people I worked with in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, are doing fabulously because it's very accepted and it's very much the fabric. In Brazil, in a lot of South American countries, I get a lot of people coming from South American countries who have relocated here. I also get an awful lot of people from India, because to them it's just a normal, natural thing.
Right, yeah.
It isn't any big deal.
Right, and probably some Asian countries as well.
Absolutely. Japanese, Chinese.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Middle Eastern. I get a fair share of people from Lebanon, which is amazing to me because I had friends from I used to work at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So I'm very familiar with the Lebanese culture because Danny Thomas was Lebanese. And so it's really fun when they come in because I feel very comfortable with them because I know the culture somewhat from my time at St. Jude.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I'm glad that America's catching up with the rest of the world on this one. So why is it used as a therapy a modality? What is the deep memory process, and explain a little bit, because I know it's a little bit different than just past life regression. How are those different?
Yeah, past life regression is a type of therapy where someone takes you back to your past life, or you go back to your past life and find out about your past life. Roger had both a PhD as a psychologist from Oxford in England, and he had a PhD from the Young Institute in Zurich. So he had 2 PhDs. He put those together with his time in Tibet with the Tibetan monks. And you see we use a Tibetan singing bowl.
I love that sound.
Yeah.
So soothing.
Yes, it is soothing. Because that was his way of doing things. And he combined all that and came up with a process that he actually copyrighted. It's called deep memory process. It treats your body, mind, and soul at the same time. So it's the only modality available that treats all 3 at the same time. Most people don't work with the soul. They work with the body, or they'll work with the mind. But treating all 3 together, deep memory process is just the type of therapy he created. I'd like to say more unique or most unique, but it's just unique. It's unique. It's the only one that does it. Yes, and what it does is it helps you on a cellular level, as well as on a body level, as well as on a spiritual level. So people feel really happy when they finish. The process, when people finish, they feel lighter. And if you read, I have 20 5-star reviews on Google. If you read my reviews, you'll see they really like it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So it treats things like anxiety and depression and phobias.
And traumas.
Traumas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it helps people figure out what happened and how to cope with it.
Yeah.
And to get through it. So when people come here, they're not victims, they're not survivors. They become participants because they see how things evolved, how they got into that certain situation, and they see what they can do as adults to change it. I had a woman who came from Tennessee, and she was an engineer in a Toyota plant in Tennessee. And because of the fact that she was the only woman engineer there, she was harassed and not treated very well. And we went back to a past life where she was a toddler in Neolithic times. But the man who was supposed to be taking care of the children and making sure they didn't get hurt didn't do his job. And she was carried off by a hyena and eaten.
Oh my.
Yes. And when she came back, she said, that man who was supposed to take care of us is my current boss. And she went home and she talked to her boss about the fact the knife you keep stabbing in my back came from a long time ago, and we need to stop this now.
So it empowered her.
It empowered her, and she went back and changed her whole life because she stood up to him for the first time and didn't let him bully her. And so it made a huge difference to her. She comes every year now, usually at Halloween time, and she loves to wear Halloween costumes here.
Wonderful.
So she's always coming in dressed like Pippi Longstocking or something like that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's fun. She's one of my favorites. Love Pippi Longstocking.
Yes.
So you must, people who've gone through a death recently must come as well to get a little bit more connection. Do you find that happening, that people?
I do, and I also find that I get quite a few people who have cancer and are terminal, and they want to see what the other side is like.
Right.
I had a young woman who was a chiropractor. She had 3 children, and she and her husband had split up. The youngest was less than a year old, and she had stage 4 breast cancer. And she knew she was dying. And she came in and sat down, and we went back to her past life. She became very calm about dying because she saw that it's a continuum. We come into this life, we learn what we need to learn, we go out, we go to the bardo or heaven, you can call it that, or you can call it paradise. But I have to break your bubble, there's no 17 virgins for the Muslims in paradise. Anyway,
I'm not concerned.
Thank you. She went there and she realized that she was going to be coming back. And her worries disappeared. Her brother called me 2 weeks later and said she died, and I can't tell you what a difference her session with you meant to her. Because she really just accepted what was going on, and things just eased up for the whole family.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And people, do they encounter their loved ones that they've passed on in the bardo? Do they
Yes.
run into them again?
Yes, people die here, which really scares a lot of people right away. But people die here, and they go to what we call the bardo, what other people call heaven, and they reunite with their whole soul family. And the nice thing that people learn here, whether they take it with them, that's up to them, is that someone who loves you will always be there when you die to take you to the Bardo. You don't have to worry about going alone. You don't have to worry about going. God loves you unconditionally, and there is no hell. When you die, you go up to the Bardo. You reunite with your whole soul family. You see them, you realize these are the people you've traveled with from lifetime to lifetime, and it's very, very much a freeing experience. You're not worried that this is the last time you're going to see your daughter. You get up there and you realize that she was your grandmother in a past life, maybe 2 sessions ago.
That's amazing that you're able, because people go and see a medium when their loved one has passed.
Yes.
And they're hoping to have like an intermediary recover messages. That's amazing to get into a state where you yourself are receiving messages directly.
That's
I think
right.
that's a very comforting position to be in.
It's very comforting when you realize how many people, all the human failings are left behind, so there's no competition, there's no anger, there's no jealousy, there's no fear. So when you get there, you're a spirit, you're a soul, and all that stuff is left behind. And so is it with your whole soul family. And you realize they love you unconditionally. The reason you couldn't see it here is because they were working out their own things they had to work out. And you were working out, and so sometimes you clash.
Right.
But when you get there, you realize that everybody loves you unconditionally. Your whole soul family does.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it really makes a difference to people. They realize they're part of the continuum, you know, and that there isn't just one life. They see that it's a path, and it's a path they've chosen.
So what exactly is the process of reincarnation? How does this go about? How does this work?
I'm going to tell you my belief system.
Okay.
Remember, it's a belief system. I came to it through working with Roger for years and years and years. Before we come into this life, we sit down with what some people like to call angels, but I call spirit guides. And you decide what you need to learn in that life. Not how pretty you're going to be or how successful or how famous you're going to be. You decide what you need to learn.
Okay, so none of the temporal things that we can get carried away with in this lifetime.
That's
There's an overarching purpose to this.
That's right. So you come in, you pick your parents before you come in. A lot of people don't like hearing that because they don't particularly care for their
They don't want the
parents.
responsibility of having made that decision.
That's right. But you do. You pick your parents based on what you need to learn. You learn a ton when you're a kid, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn to feed yourself. You learn to clothe yourself. You learn to go to school. You learn to associate with other people. You learn everything that you learn in school. And then you get out and you have the rest of your life. Well, when I work with people, we go back to, in their past life, their childhood, sometime between birth and 20, and they find out what their childhood in that past life was, and who were their parents. And their parents may be their sisters or brothers or cousins or aunts or uncles, or they could easily be their parents again in the next life. So you see who it was and what kind of formation you had, because your whole world is formed by what happens to you as a child. If you decide you hated peas as a kid, there's a very good likelihood you're going to hate them the rest of your life. If you had a mother who was a great cook, you're going to want gourmet food the rest of your life. You know, if you had a father who taught you his trade and you went into the trade with him, that's going to form you.
Right.
And all of this stuff figures out who you are. You figure out what you learned in that past life that you're using in this life. And we take you through the past life, hit the significant events. Now, I'm just the facilitator. You actually do all the work.
Yeah. How does that process go about? So when somebody comes in, what is the process for it?
Okay, good. They sit down in the same chair that you're sitting in.
Oh, okay.
And we talk for about half an hour. I need to find out a little bit about you and see what I can invoke from past life from you. I ask about feelings. And we find out how you feel about anger, how you feel about fear. And a lot of the anger stuff will tell me, were you a soldier in the past life? Were you, someone who was on the inside person, or were you an outside person? Are you extrovert? Are you introvert? So the way you respond to the feelings questions tells me a lot. So then I know when I get you into your past life, what's going to happen. So you lay down, I help you relax. It's pretty easy. This is the rain stick, and I use it just to soothe people. If people come in and they're upset or anxious, I have them the rain stick.
Oh, that's very lovely. Where did this come from?
Well, it's from the Southwest. It's made by Indians. It's actually a piece of cactus, and they cut off all the spines, and put them on the inside. So, and then they put the seeds of the cactus inside and plug it on either end. And you can see this particular one has quite a face on it.
Oh, yeah.
This is a big spring stick, but it just helps to soothe them.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And then you lay down on the sofa. We do some simple relaxation exercises. Tighten every muscle in your hands, arms, and shoulders. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, and let it go and feel that relaxation. You could do that, right?
Yeah.
And so then I say, imagine a bridge. Any bridge you choose, walk across the bridge. When you get to the other side of the bridge, step off the bridge. When you step off the bridge, look down and see your feet. When you see your feet, you're in your past life. So you look down, you see your feet. Oh, I'm barefoot. Okay, look up to your waist. What are you wearing up to your waist? Oh, I have on a pair of beige shorts. Okay, look at your shoulders, chest, and arms. What do you have on top? Oh, I have a t-shirt on. Are you a boy or a girl? I'm a girl. How old are you? 8. You'll just know. And then we find out what your childhood was like. I ask, where do you live? Who do you live with? How long have you lived there? And so I find out what kind of childhood you had. And then we go forward. I don't pick the significant events, your soul does.
Interesting.
So the soul, I go 1, 2, 3. Imagine the next place that you live. Let's go forward. And all of a sudden you're 25 and you're walking down the street and you're on your way to work and you're a copy editor for a large publishing house. And then we go forward some more. And it doesn't depend on the normal things that people think of as the big things in life. Like most people think of when they graduate from high school, when they graduate from college, when they get married, when they have kids. It depends on what your soul thinks the significant events are.
I see.
And we go all the way through life, and then it's time for you to die. Which sounds kind of scary, except you wouldn't be sitting here alive if you hadn't died on the sofa in that past life. Because it's a continuum.
Right.
So I say, take your last breath. As you take your last breath, let your soul come out of your body. When you can look down and see the body of the person you just were, tell me what you see. And you'll be able to do that. And you'll look down and you'll say, oh, I was an old woman with long gray hair. I have on a nightie. I'm 90 years old. And then we review the life. What did you learn in that life? What have you learned so far in this life? And just start thinking about, what have you learned? You learned how to be a kid. You learned how to manage school. You learned how to get a job and how to make friends and how to be an adult and maybe how to raise kids. And all of that stuff that you learn helps you become who you are. And by the time you get old, most people don't want to hear what you have to say, and that's the time that you have the most wisdom. So it's the irony.
Yeah.
They're very interested in you when you're a child, but not so interested as you get older, and that's when you know something.
Depends on the culture too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you die, I say, look for the light. The light is there when you're dead, not when you're alive. We can't see it now because we're not dead. But the light is there, and you've heard about it all your life. Look for the light. Look for the light at the end of the tunnel. You look, and someone you love is coming to help you make this transition. It could be your mother, it could be a favorite aunt, it could be your father, it could be anyone who loves you enormously. Normally, it's a parent or a grandparent. Sometimes I get people who get their dog. One woman had her cat come.
Really?
All deceased. They will take you up to the bardo, what we call heaven. It's like a giant waiting room in the sky. And there you look around and your soul family is there. Even if they've reincarnated, soul is not subject to human limitations. Human limitations say you can be at one place at one time. Soul can be in more than one place at one time. So you see all the people who love you. You could see your brother who's still alive. Very likely you'll see your parents who are deceased, your grandparents who are deceased, and you'll realize they're watching out for you from the other side. Everybody says, oh, I'm so alone, no one cares about me. But when you get to the other side, you figure out that everybody cares about you, and they're all watching you all the time. And the reason you've done as well as you've done is you're on a path, and they're watching out for you. They're saying, a little more to the right, Melita, a little more to the left. Keep going, and they're encouraging you. And sometimes when you've had a new idea, it's because one of them has whispered it in your ear.
Okay.
So you celebrate the time with them. And then we gather them all around you, and you realize how strong and how supported you are. And we call in anyone you want to talk to. people call in their mother, their father, and they talk to them about the fact that some things were good in their childhood and some things were not good. And they say, okay, now never do that again. Or it could be a grandparent and they say, well, I remember how we made cookies together in the kitchen and I can't tell you how much that meant to me, that you took the time. And you took time to come to my soccer games. And you took time once I had a baby to come over and babysit for me. Whatever it is, and then they hug their grandparent. And so it's a very nice time. Then it's time to go to where the spirit guides are. The spirit guides, some people call them angels, and that's fine. But it's the whole collection, because remember, spirit can be in more than one place at one time. All of the spirit guides are there, and they have a special message just for you. Usually it's words of encouragement, and they have a sense of humor. I had a young woman come in from Brooklyn, and her message was, let it be. That's shorter than it usually is, but I said, okay, I wrote it down. And when she came back and she and I started talking about it, she started to cry. She said, my grandmother raised me and she died 15 years ago. I miss her so much. And that's what she used to say to me all the time. Let it be, let it be. She said, see how much it means to me? She pulled up her sleeve and she had it tattooed on her wrist. So it was very important to her. Now conversely, I had a young veterinarian came in. He was just newly out of school, and he was sure he was going to break down the doors of the world and he was going to be a huge success. He didn't have a job, but he was just graduating. So he said to the spirit guides, are you proud of me? And they said, not yet. So sometimes they'll set you back on your heels a little bit.
Well, sometimes we need it. So.
Then it's time to come back, and I have to bring you back. Nobody wants to leave because it's unconditional love. But I trick you. And I tell you this beforehand so you know. You have to come back. Pick a power animal, any animal you choose, ask the power animal to bring you back to this room. And then once they come back, I get up and get a cup of cold water, and we sit and chat for a little while. I need to make sure you're fully back before I send you home, especially if you're driving home. And that's basically it. It's a pretty simple process. It is not hypnosis. You are awake and aware during the entire time. You can bring your cell phone and tape it. I don't record it or tape it at all because it's your private information, and I think it should stay your private information.
How long does this all take?
2.5 hours. So it's a goodly amount of time. I don't charge by the hour, I charge by the session.
Okay.
So people come and we take as much time as they need. But usually 2.5 hours is enough.
Does this work for everybody, or do you have to be a little bit, open and suggestible, or do you have to have a specific type of personality for this to work for you?
I have been doing this since '89. I've had 3 people in all that time and couldn't go back. I've done better than 3,500 of them.
Wow.
Yes, I'll tell you a story. I came up the stairs one day to my office, and sitting on the chair was this big Marine, and he had a Marine cap on and a Marine jacket, and he was old. And I said, I'm never going to be able to arrest this man, not in a million years. So he came in and he sat down and he took off his jacket and he had a Marine shirt on. And I said, you've been in the Marines? And he said, yes, I was in Vietnam. And he was this one tough dude, and he was the manager for multiple sclerosis for a nearby state. He managed the offices for them and managed all the care, because multiple sclerosis patients need a lot of care. So he was a nurse practitioner, and he managed the entire thing for the state. So he lay down on the sofa. He went back to Vietnam in the 1700s. He was a young girl. The young girl that he was, she got sold. Her family sold her. That was a very common practice in those days. And the man who bought her beat her and treated her horribly. So she ran away and she ran home to her family. She said, I can't stand it. I've got to come back. And her father said, there's nothing I can do. I sold you. You have to go back to this man. She's walking back, and when she gets on a bridge over a river, she jumps off the bridge and kills herself. And when he came back, this big, tough Marine, he said, I knew that was going to happen. And I thought, thank God. Thank God you knew. Because I wasn't sure that it was going to work. And it worked beautifully.
So people, it sounds like people, they retain a memory of some of the experiences that they've gone through in past lives, and it kind of informs. How are some of the other ways that those memories creep up on you? Like, in terms of your abilities and
If you've ever seen someone who's a child prodigy, usually that person was that in a past life. And you know Mozart. He was obviously a composer in his past life because he could just dash it off. He didn't even hear. He couldn't even hear, but he could just dash it off. And there's been a lot of child prodigies in all different sorts of things. There used to be a show, Doogie Howser, and he was a doctor at like 14. And there's a lot of people who are geniuses, like Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. He was a genius, and yet he had very little social skills. And so that's what past life can be. It can also be something terrible happened to you. I had a woman come in and sit down, and she said her son kept telling her that he had had a past life, but he wouldn't tell her his name. And so they did a little bit more investigation on it, and it turned out the man was a tavern keeper in this area, and he'd had a really bad life.
Wow.
And so the kid didn't want to go back to it, so he didn't want to tell her his name.
Oh.
Yeah, so you don't know what's going to come up. You don't know what's going to come up. One of my very favorite is I have a psychiatrist who refers patients to me. And this woman had, she'd been in a local mental hospital 3 times in the last 6 months because she really felt she had to kill herself. She was 27 years old. She and her husband were very happy together. She was a hairdresser. Her job was going well. Her sister, they lived in a triple-decker. Her mother and father lived on the 1st floor. She and her husband lived on the 2nd floor. Her sister, with her 2 children, lived on the 3rd floor. So she had family nearby, very, very nearby. And it was a Middle Eastern family, and she was she was born in the United States, but she was the 1st generation of that family to be born in the United States. And she just felt she had to kill herself. So I sat her down, and we talked a little bit. We went back to her past life, or she went back. I facilitate. I don't do the work. You do all the work. And we found out when she was 17, she was very rebellious, and her family lived on a farm, and they had a number of horses, and she just took her rucksack and put it over her shoulder, ran out to the barn, grabbed a horse, and ran away.
Oh my.
And she thought she could do, like a typical teenager, she thought she could do better than with her family.
Yeah.
After a couple of weeks, she came home.
Right, that's also typical.
Yes, her family was delighted to see her. And she settled in, and she realized that she needed to change too. She married a young man in the village. They were very happy. They had a couple of kids. They lived on the farm with her family. And the farm got bigger and bigger, and it worked out very well until a plague came through. It was about 1,500 in Europe, and a plague came through, killed everyone in the village except she and 2 other people that she wasn't related to. So in despair, she's 27 years old, ran out to the barn, threw a noose up over one of the rafters, put it around her neck, got up on the horse, hit the horse on the behind, and killed herself. So the woman came back. She said, now I know why I killed myself. That's not happened to me in this life.
Right.
I don't need to carry it forward. I don't need to kill myself.
I don't have that trauma.
I don't.
That was from another life.
That's right. I've resolved that trauma. I'm not living in that life now.
Yeah.
That trauma is over. And she called her psychiatrist and said, I don't need to come in anymore. I'm cured. Her psychiatrist wasn't too happy with me.
Because they like you coming back and back.
However, she did very well. I've heard from her since, and she and her husband now have a couple of kids, and things are going well for her.
Good.
Yeah, so you never know what's going to happen when you get in.
But apparently your soul knows what you need to know.
That's right. Your soul picks the past life. I'd have a lot more business if I could pick your past life. I'd have a lot more business if I could let you pick your past life.
Yeah.
But your soul picks it before you come in. It's really up to your soul. And that's why most people come. They say, oh, I just felt this need. I have a woman coming in this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And she contacted me on Friday and said, I have to come on a Sunday. I said, well, let's talk about it and find out what would work for you. And it turned out she really wanted to come in right away. So we were able to hook something up for Monday. That's not my advertising. I'd like to say it's my advertising, but it's not. She had a need. And what this does is it fills a need. The soul was telling her it's time to come in.
Going forward, they find that anxiety is reduced, and you're just able to leave that lifetime, and it's not, it doesn't need to be as traumatic as the young lady with the suicide, but
that's right.
fears of all sorts of things can be creeping up with no logical explanation, and it's amazing that just being cognizant of why that's happening can have such a healing effect.
And cognizant of the fact that you finished the life, and that you went on and everything was okay. And in this life, everything is okay. I mean, what do people tell you when you're really having a bad time? It will be all right. And that's what people find out, you know? And they find out that they travel with the soul family, and they'll see all these people again. One young woman came in, and she actually did a podcast for me. I won't mention her name, but the podcast is up on my website if you want to look at it. And she had just lost her grandmother, and her grandmother and she were best of friends. And she was absolutely devastated. She came in and found out sometime in the early 1700s, she and her grandmother were best friends. They were on a boat headed for America, and the boat capsized, and they all died. And she realized that this was the same person that she'd had a really good relationship in this life. So people that you feel that you've known right away, places that you think that you just feel comfortable right away, those are two indicators of a past life. A talent that you have, like you got an A in history without even trying. And so those are all indicators that you've had a past life. Plus, a lot of people have memories that kind of pop up. I had one young man who's a witch in town come in, and he had always felt that he was part of the Civil War. And he had vivid dreams about what happened in the Civil War. And we went back, and that's the past life he went back to. He was a colonel in the Civil War, and he was the one bringing the messages back and forth. And yeah, it really helped him a lot to put rest to that. Once he did the past life, it didn't keep popping up all the time. Those dreams kind of vanished. So it gives people a lot of comfort.
And context, too.
And context.
So another thing that seems to happen is these intense relationships, like out of the blue, that do intense reactions of either hatred or love, and it gives a little bit of explanation behind that as well, because that seems to be quite a phenomenon.
Yes. You've met people that you just immediately could talk to, and everything was fine, and you knew the next time you talked to them, it was a year later, they'd still be fine.
Right.
And you've met other people that it was oil and water. Just not in a million years where you're going to be friends. And guess what? They keep popping up in your life until you learn how to handle it.
And sometimes it's a, no thank you, I'd rather not see you anymore, right? Well, also, I've learned my lesson, goodbye. I'm not dating anymore. So.
Yeah, some people come into your life with a puzzle piece to give you. And other people come into your life because you have their puzzle piece. And sometimes you just trade that puzzle piece and you never see the person. And sometimes it's a relationship that lasts a very long time. You just don't know.
Interesting. Well, I think we've run out of time for today. I think it was wonderful to meet with you and learn all about past life regression. I really loved the opportunity.
Thank you, Melita. This was wonderful of you to take the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.